big story coming out of what's going to happen for the regular season for week 1 is the quarterback position for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And yesterday, the Steelers game of preseason 2 wrapped up against the Buffalo Bills and wasn't anything exciting to begin with for either side, for the Steelers or Bills. And then a 9-3 loss for the Pittsburgh Steelers, falling 0-2 in the preseason. And of course, next week being the final one, the biggest question is who's going to be the quarterback for the Steelers week 1. Let me just talk about going to the stats right now. Russell Wilson did make his Steeler debut. Did not play preseason week 1. Played against the Bills. Had a couple drives. He went 8 for 10 for 47 yards. He also was sacked 3 times. Had a QBR of a QBR rating of 86.3. Justin Fields wrapped up for the rest of the game, I should say. Went for 11 for 17, 92 yards, 78.6 QBR rating. He also was a leading rusher on the team with 8 rushes for 42 yards. Longest rush was 20. And many people are going back and forth. Definitely, it's a big one. It's definitely, for me going a little overreacting. This might be franchise altering in a way because you have two polar opposites, not in just play style, but also the age and where they are, where they're at in their careers. It was surprising that they brought in Justin Fields, going back to when this all happened, when they signed Russell Wilson to Pittsburgh. That wasn't a big of a shock, but it was also still bringing in Justin Fields to back up behind them. It seemed pretty adamant throughout the process that Mike Tomlin wanted to make Russell Wilson the starter and have Justin Fields back up his position. And for me, it didn't really make any sense because of where they're at with their for quarterbacks. They just moved off of Kenny Pickett, which was a failure. It was the first really franchise, quarterback they tried to pick after Ben Roethlisberger, after he's been there from 2004 to 2021. Kenny Pickett did not work out. He's the backup in Philadelphia, and even then there's stories I hear of that now not going too well either for him. So really they're trying to look for the next guy, and you can go in either ways, and I don't think either option is necessarily bad, but for my pick, I would say that the Steelers need to go with Justin Fields. They have to, and we're going to look more into Justin Fields as opposed to Russell Wilson because we know who he is. We know what he's done, what he's capable of. Definitely had a better second season with the Denver Broncos as opposed to his first one under Nathaniel Hackett. But of course, he's getting towards the end of his career, 36 years old. It makes, for me, it doesn't make sense for the Steelers to go in that direction unless they want just the short term, once again, keeping that streak alive for Mike Tomlin for winning seasons. But let's look at Justin Fields. They brought him, and he has his fifth year option with, my apologies, his 4th year. They voided the 5th year option. So he's only making $3.2 million on the cap, similar to Russell Wilson as well, making around $2 million on a 1-year deal. This makes all the sense in the world. And now some people might believe that Russell Wilson is a better quarterback than Justin Fields right now. Certainly maybe a better thrower of the football than Justin Fields, but I think they do have to go in that direction. And to me, maybe this is not, going on the line and saying this, but they have to try him out because of this year. They void the 5th year option. He's going to hit free agency. You have to see what you have in Justin Fields to see if you want to make that plunge to get him. And I'm not saying that if he has a good year this year that it's going to be like a Justin or Jordan Love situation where he's going to be commanding $50 million. I still think the contract is going to be far less than that. It may be a little bit more, if that, best case scenario, it does work out and he does get a contract extension for the Steelers. It may be a little bit more than people are willing to pay him, but it's certainly not going to be in that $50 million range. So you don't have to worry about it whatsoever. And I think it's a good reason why to go with him because he's not in a position really to command that type of money, and you don't have to worry about that as well. And I think you also have kind of a backup policy in Russell Wilson in worst case scenarios. If it doesn't work out, or if Justin Fields plays good, and just there's a dispute with the contract, you can fall on Russell Wilson because he's not going to be asking for a ton of money. I know it took a lot less for this, to come with the Steelers this year. I don't know if it'd be any different next year if they wanted to do it, but it makes sense in the world to start Justin Fields and see what he's capable of with a better roster with the Steelers. Certainly probably the best roster he's been on for his career. I mean, unfortunately, it's too late for for Justin Fields with the Chicago Bears. You look at the wide receiving core they have. They have Roma Dunze, DJ Moore, who Justin Fields played in his final year with, and had DJ Moore had a career year with him, over 1,400 receiving yards. They also have Keenan Allen, DeAndre Swift. So it looks good for Caleb Williams, but before that, it's been pretty lackluster and pretty horrible to say the least. When you go from that to Darnell Mooney and Chase Claypool to George Pickens, and that outside of that, the wide receiving group isn't that crazy, after that, but certainly I think structurally wise, it's better franchise, better organization, better well run. So certainly in a much better spot there. And $3.2 million is a huge steal for Justin Fields in this case. You look at his stats, I think he's done decent given what he's had to deal with in Chicago. You look at kind of throughout his rookie year, because it wasn't really spectacular along with the rest of the 2021 draft class. You look at 2022, and I think I really want to focus on that more because of the dual threat side of it. Yes, he played 15 games, missed the couple 2 games, especially the last game of the year where he could have broken the rushing record, which we'll get to in a second. He had over 2,200 passing yards, 17 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. Doesn't seem spectacular. Maybe definitely better in the second year, but still may not up to the standards that people are hoping for. But when you look at 2022 with his rushing ability, over 1,100 yards rushing. Now, mind you, he was 1 game away. It was that final game of the season where he would have broken Lamar Jackson's single-season rushing record. I mean, think about 1,143 yards rushing, 8 touchdowns. He had to run for his life. The offensive line was horrible. Receiving core, we talked about. Chase Claypool, that should be said enough, is one of the top receivers they had. So definitely that was fantastic. I mean, I don't want to say Lamar Jackson-esque, but it gives you the same quality. Gives you the same playing style as Lamar Jackson. Last year, played 13 games, 2 less than he did the season before. He had over 2,500 passing yards, 16 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. The rushing was down by a lot, but still pretty good. 657, 4 touchdowns. This is what I think the Pittsburgh Steelers have really been missing. This is probably the most physically gifted quarterback, and it might be crazy to say because of Ben Roethlisberger with his size and his arm strength, but overall with the mobility, probably since Cordell Stewart. And this is a polar opposite of what they didn't have for Ben Roethlisberger for the longest time, just kind of being worn out with all the punishment he took in the hits. Similar to he was kind of like Josh Allen before Josh Allen, really, with that, going over, running through players, taking a lot of big hits. So towards the end, he did slow down because of that. Came a little bit more of a pocket passer, not really running as much. So this definitely brings a new element that the Steelers haven't been used to for quite a long time. And this is something that should really benefit him. The Steelers' offense line has improved. It's gotten better. Didn't really look good for Russell Wilson in the 2 drives he had. Made Greg Russo look like a defense player of the year, Myles Garrett. But certainly the offense line is getting better for the Steelers. And with that mobility, it brings a whole new dynamic. And certainly I'm still a Justin Fields fan, a believer that if he went to a better organization, a better situation, he still has the capabilities of being a good quarterback. I don't want to go as far as say elite or franchise quarterback, but maybe he proves us wrong. Maybe he definitely takes a step in the right direction and builds off that and gives you, similar to what he did in 2022. Certainly you want the passing yards and touchdowns to be better, but for the rushing ability for over 1,100 rushing yards and 8 touchdowns, I think it's fantastic for this Pittsburgh offense. It's going to be interesting to see what, especially for their offensive coordinator, how that works out for Arthur Smith, because just really was bad at using his elite young players in Atlanta, especially Bijan Robinson. So we'll see how this plays out with the Pittsburgh Steelers. But certainly you would want to lean towards Justin Fields because of just finding out the future. And to me, I think it makes more sense to start Fields than go to Russell Wilson than vice versa, because giving Justin Fields a starting position week 1 shows him we believe that you could be the franchise quarterback. We want to see what you're capable of, but we give you the confidence that you could be that. And if it doesn't work out, you follow Russell Wilson, and he comes in after, let's say, worst case scenario, Justin Fields plays bad for half the season, maybe lost in half, and Russell Wilson comes in and keeps that streak alive. They go 8-9, 9-8, whatever. Maybe I shouldn't say 8-9, but 9-8, whatever the case may be, somewhat like an average tier. And they move off of Justin Fields and go back to Russell Wilson for another 1-year deal. Maybe draft a quarterback in this upcoming draft and have him learn underneath Russell Wilson, and then the year after you have him play. As opposed to Russell Wilson where, again, vice versa, where maybe he gets halfway through the year or 3/4 of the season, they're out of the playoffs, they decided to sit Russell Wilson and bring Justin Fields. Then you have to kind of figure out on the fly for a very shorter sample size, is Justin Fields worth the money? And again, he's not going to be commanding a ton of money, nor is he in a position to. But it's going to be very difficult if he comes in for 4 or 5 games. He plays well, but again, you have a very small sample size of what he did in Pittsburgh Now you have to go on the fly and take that leap of faith and sign him, and then hope that next year when he becomes a full-time starter, if that's the direction they want to go to, it doesn't pan out, and then they're stuck with paying whatever how much money they are with the guarantees and the cap and so forth. So it makes more sense to give Justin Fields, the starting position right away. It makes sense. They need to find a franchise quarterback, and again, is he going to take you to a Super Bowl? Is he going to do is he going to make all pros, this and that? Is he going to do all these great things? I don't think so, but I still think he'd be a competent quarterback, and maybe that's something that Steelers fans don't want to hear, and they want something that's much better. But I think for the meantime, Justin Fields can prove himself, and I think certainly I would not be surprised if he has a good to great season because of what he can bring. It's definitely, again, is something very different than what they have not been used to in Pittsburgh for quite a long time. Towards the end, Ben Roethlisberger just, was kind of just worn out, was starting to wear out. You saw the age, you saw especially the arm strength. We don't have to talk about the Kenny Pickett era and the Mitch Trubisky's. I mean, they've gone through it the last couple of years with quarterbacks, Mason Rudolph's. So definitely, it's a nice change of pace. Maybe he hasn't flashed. Maybe he hasn't played as great as maybe people want him to in the preseason. But I think no doubt this is a great building block. Again, 11-17, 92 yards. Isn't that great? 17 attempts for 92 yards. But again, for the mobility, and certainly he showed that right before halftime, getting the Steelers in position to get their only field goal, of course. But that's just something that is different from Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson can't do that. Maybe, if we're talking about young Russell Wilson, absolutely. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about 35, 36-year-old Russell Wilson who doesn't want to run anymore. And certainly you saw in the first two drives him taking a lot of sacks and pressures, as opposed to if that was Justin Fields, he probably avoids some of that. I know the first preseason game wasn't that great because he had 2 fumbles, miscommunication between him and the center. But I think this year you have to find out. I mean, you can't just keep playing for the record to keep that streak alive of winning seasons. If you're going to take a hit, it should be this year, especially for Mike Tomlin. I know his job is secure there, but I think he needs to find out fast what he has in these guys. And Russell Wilson obviously is not the franchise quarterback. Even if he plays well, this will be probably his only year here. Maybe he pushes it to another a second season. But I think it's more important to try and figure out what Justin Fields is. Worst case scenario, yes, if it fails, you have a losing record this year, you go and draft the quarterbacks. But I think you have to do it. You can't just keep settling and just keep, being okay at best, getting to the playoffs, losing the wild card, or just missing the playoffs with the winning record. I think you have to stop that. That's something that Pittsburgh, I think Steelers fans have been sick of for a while now. It's you look at, for Mike Tomlin too, something I really criticize him with is just the lack of getting to conference championships, Super Bowl appearances. When's the last time they've gone to one? Was it 2015, 2016? The last time they went to a conference championship. The last time they went to a Super Bowl was 2010. When was the last time they won one? Or excuse me, I think it was maybe 2011 was the Super Bowl appearance. I think a couple years prior, maybe in their Super Bowl win against the Arizona Cardinals, against Kurt Warner. So you look at it, it's been well over a decade since they've made it to the Super Bowl, and ever since then they've had one conference championship appearance to show for it. And to me, that's very disappointing. The other chance they had was in 2017 when they basically got shocked by Blake Bortles and Jacksonville Jaguars. They could have gone back and had a rematch against the New England Patriots. Who knows what happened with that? But again, it's just the last decade has been very mediocre for what the standard is supposed to be for the Steelers. And I think for this one, I mean, if you stick with Russell Wilson and just buy yourself another year, you're continuing the trend. You're continuing the cycle. Is it going to suck if the streak ends of winning records if you put in Justin Fields to try and figure out what he can or can't do, or if he is the quarterback or not? Yes, it's going to suck that the streak ends for Mike Tomlin, but it's just something that it's just one of those things where you have to take a step back to really progress. And I really compares to, fitting enough, the Buffalo Bills were in Sean McDermott's first year, they made the playoffs. It was something that wasn't expected. Granted, they did get a lot of help towards the end. They went 9-7, made the playoffs. In 2018, he kind of really tore things down, and he drafted Josh Allen, moved up to 7th overall to select him, and they took a step back. They went 6-10. Josh Allen was all over the place. Certainly he was the raw talent, but you did see the potential there. I had no problem with that. I would rather take one step back to secure, a decade long of success. And thus far, again, hasn't made the Super Bowl, hasn't gotten there yet. But the Buffalo Bills are one of the top teams in the NFL. Josh Allen is an elite quarterback in the NFL. So that one step back really, pivotal to this team into, building the team better, getting more weapons for Josh Allen to be in the team that they are now. And I think this should be the similar case for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Maybe you have to take a step back this year to try and figure out for if Justin Fields is your guy or not, to understand what the next decade's going to be. To me, I think it is obvious that Justin Fields should be the starter. We'll see what Mike Tomlin decides to do. I think, of course, if you listen to what I've said, if Russell Wilson is the week 1 starter, I think it is a big mistake, and it just keep you're kind of pushing the problem down the road another year, and then next year comes and we keep doing the same thing. I think with $2.3 million for Justin Fields on a 1-year deal, this makes absolute sense. I think there's very little to lose and so much to gain in what Justin Fields can potentially do for this offense. Maybe he can, again, with his dynamic, he can really elevate this offense to a whole nother level and really, potentially elevate George Pickens. Again, we talk about for DJ Moore. DJ Moore had his best season of his career with Justin Fields. He had over 1,400 receiving yards. Was a Pro Bowler. Is now regarded as one of the better wide receivers and one of the best wide receivers in the league, as opposed to in Carolina, where yes, people did see them as that way, but he was kind of hidden just because of this dysfunction with the Carolina Panthers. There's a reason why DJ Moore had a great year. You have to give some credit to Justin Fields, and I won't be surprised if he had that same success with George Pickens of the amazing catching, the elite awareness that he has, the ball tracking, what he's able to do. He has gotten kind of lashing out, that attitude problems, but he can really elevate George Pickens into a similar set of DJ Moore. I think I'd rather trust that and his physical tools as opposed to Russell Wilson, where we know he's at the end of his career.